on with the plugs. Hello everyone, this is Marshall with the plugs. We drop plugs from above. How do we do that? Well, I guess you'll find out. Tonight, I have Mr. Tony Goldstein with us. He's a man with over 30 years of experience in ministry, and he's been down an interesting road in his life, and we're here to find out some new inspiration stories or whatever he has for us. So, Tony, go ahead and introduce yourself to the crowd.
Well, Marshall, it's such a great privilege of doing this. I'm really excited, first and foremost, about how all this is going, and I love the fact that being just ready to do and to hear what anybody has to say is just exciting to me to start this new adventure for you. So I congratulate you on this new adventure and looking forward to seeing where it's going. So.
Thanks, Tony. We really appreciate that.
That is my pleasure. So.
It's a privilege to be in your house. Thank you for the pizza. Really appreciate that. Oh my gosh. I know everyone loves pizza out there. So what's on your heart tonight? What do you really feel like that you have to bring to tell us and the plugs audience?
That's awesome. Well, first and foremost, I wanted to directly go in ministry, just the things that have happened, but I really want to start this off by letting everyone know where I started.
All right.
And if that's okay, and I'll just speak my heart and let everyone know what happened with me, and
where are you from, Tony? Where did all this start?
I was born and raised in California, in Southern California area. I was in the for probably the first 15 years, I was in the Los Angeles area in California, and then I ended up in the Ventura County area, which is about 30 miles north of Los Angeles, and then from there, we've just, I am married. I've been married for 26 years.
Oh my!
Yeah. So that's the awesome thing, and I have 4 kids.
Wow.
My oldest is 24, and my youngest is 17. So
congratulations.
Thank you. It's an awesome adventure. Just to see that where their lives is taken, and just seeing what has happened in them and their journey, and it's just been a huge family adventure, and I'll tell you right off the bat, it has not been an easy adventure, so anyways, if I could just let you know where I started from, if that's okay. And
yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, we want you to show the good, the bad, the dirty. Give it to us all, Tony.
Well, first and foremost, I was raised in, I guess my dad was Jewishese and my mom was Christianese. And
a little bit knees there,
yeah.
huh?
I basically meaning that, all the family gatherings, like Santa was huge, Easter Bunny was huge, and Passover, everything was a more of a just to get the families together. It wasn't, and then the presents under the tree. And so my parents decided when they got married, was they weren't going to push religion down our throats, but by that it was like there was nothing. We never went to church, we never went to temple, I wasn't like, I didn't go through the Jewish faith, but it was something that, having the last name Goldstein, everyone asked, so you Jewish? and so it's funny to me because, growing up in that and not knowing what it meant to be Jewish or really what it meant to be Christian, you know. And I see it today so much where people use Christian or, you know, just, you know, oh, because my parents said that we were Christian, that we're Christian, you know, and not really knowing what, it was basically more on the lines of religion more than relationship. And that's really what I've learned over the years and just became excited about, you know, even though my journey was never, ever easy. I mean, we've been through so much as a family.
Well, give us a sneak peek. Like, how hard did it get?
I can tell you that honestly, with all the hard parts, it's been where I've gone to really big bouts of depression, and just really not trusting, like raising my fist to God, just saying, you know, hey, you know, here it is that I feel like I'm supposed to serve you, but I'm not hearing anything, you know, and I knew that there was something missing. I knew that there was something going on that I really needed to know who I was, because, you know, growing in that household, my dad was a huge drinker, you know, and I found out later on in life, or, you know, as we're growing up, I had some friends that would come over because we were the only family in the neighborhood that had a swimming pool. So everyone wanted to come to our house, not to be friends with me, but they wanted to use me as a, okay, I want to go swimming. So, you know, a lot of people came over our house, and, you know, I never felt like I was wanted or needed because of, you know, how I was raised. Was, since I was the only boy in my family, I have two younger sisters, and having that, you know, being that I was the only boy, I was really thrashed on from my dad. He let me know from a very early age that I was never going to amount to anything. He would tell me how stupid I was, and that, you know, why can't I be more like my sister, you know?
My.
Yeah, so it was, you know, things like that I grew up with. But one of the things that hit me the hardest was he would told me that, you know, that it was my fault that ruined their marriage.
Wow.
You know, and so, you know, after...
How old were you?
Oh gosh. This was, it started as memories that I can remember. It started just before kindergarten.
Oh my.
And because I remember actually going into kindergarten and hearing other kids in class saying, hey, my parents are divorced, and I was like, what's that? You know, and that, well, my dad lives somewhere else and my mom is here. And so I remember going home just wishing that they would just get a divorce. Not really understanding what that meant, or, you know, what a relation, but it was literally when my dad would come home and come out to find out later on in life that there was a lot of, you know, other women that were part of this, you know, with adultery and, you know, things like that. And my, you know, it was all snuck behind the scenes, you know. We never knew. All the family, you know, came to our house again because we had the pool. So my mom, on the opposite end of things, would fight my dad tooth and nail. So it was a whole black and white situation. You know, it was like my dad would say something and my mom would go all the way to the opposite end and say, it's kind of like what's going on in our nation right now. You know, it's just, you know, it's at the extreme left or the right. So it was like this constant bashing back and forth. So we never got to go on a family vacation without something traumatic, like you know, being yelled at, or my mom would make it so hard on it. Didn't know that, you know, just didn't understand. But it was just a very difficult time of our lives.
Okay.
So
When did things get better for you when you were a child?
well, it actually I went through school, with this. Um, when I was 14, my mom asked me, "Hey, do you want to go to church?" I'm like, uh, what is that? What does that mean? And so she told me about it, and I said, "Will it make Dad bad?" And she goes, "Probably." And I said, "Great," and because again, I was always the brunt of all the problems, so it was like I always sought for his love, sought for just a dad's attention. So instead of the negative attention, excuse me, instead of the positive attention, I went towards the negative attention. So just knowing, hey, I knew that he was going to get on me for going to church, and there was some, you know, really hardcore punishments that would happen. So when I was 14, this to me is one of the coolest things that ever happened. Just growing up out of not really knowing who God was, and so anyways, when I was 14, I was, my mom took me to this church because she knew some people that went there, and it was really funny because it was a really small church, and one of the deacons' children, or child, excuse me, he I didn't know, anything about church, but I went to the Sunday school, the typical Sunday school, and I sat next to him, and he welcomed me, which I thought was pretty cool. But he goes, "Hey, I have all these firecrackers. Do you want me to blow them off in here?" I'm like, "What? This is church?" And so I got all excited. And he blew them off, and of course it shut the church down. And
wow,
it was
firecrackers in the church.
Yes, so it was one of those.
What era was this?
Well, this was when I was 14, so I just turned 50. So here it is. It was hilarious.
Wow.
Where you see that the fire department was called and. And what the interesting thing was, this was a huge memory to me, that was the first thing I saw was church. I thought, this is church, I'm all for it, and so I was invited to go to the summer camp, and I've never, heard that before or seen it, and the youth pastor actually came up to me, let me know, he let everyone know what the cost was, and that they needed the funds within 2 weeks, to know that we were going to go to this camp, and the cost of the camp was I think it was $270 for the whole week. And so I went home, I told my mom, and of course my mom told my dad, and he's like, "I'm effing not going to give you anything." I mean, that was, just to let you know, my first recorded baby word, this is how bad it was in my house, my first recorded baby word was the F word.
Wow.
And
we're not talking about food or family.
No.
Oh, man.
It was just one of those things that, and everyone laughed about, but later on I would say it more and more. So, I learned what soap tasted like a lot.
Oh, man.
And, so which is really funny because that was the word choice in my house that I learned from them. And that so I got the soap in the mouth.
You got some of that bar soap, huh?
Yeah, right?
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, literally standing, it was like, to me, it was, watching the Little Rascals. That's what, it was, just seeing that, Spanky having a bar of soap in his mouth, But, anyways, the youth pastor told me that, and that was a response from my dad. And so I let the youth pastor know, and I said, "No, I can't go." And he goes, do you want to go? And I said, yeah, of course I want to go. He goes, okay, this is what I need you to do. And he goes, it's nothing weird or anything, but I need you to go to the edge of your bed. I need you to get on your knees and just close your eyes. And like you're talking with me, I want you to talk to God. And I'm like, oh, okay. And
wow.
yeah. And so the thing that he tells me, he goes, I want you to ask, I say, Lord, if you want me to go to summer camp, provide for me. So I'm like, okay, it's like, whatever, I'll give it a try. It was very strange. And so I did it, and here it was. I woke up the next morning feeling like I needed to wash cars and mow lawns. And like that was something, and my mom, the first thing that she told me, she goes, okay, well, if you're taking out the lawnmower, make sure that it comes back clean. Like, it can't have any other grass in it, I'm like, okay, no problem. So I did. Well, I made myself this little carry box, with a slit in it, and I told people that I wasn't charging. I told them what I was doing, and so I actually, what I know now, it's called a donation. So, but I said, all I'm asking for is that whatever you want to give me towards camp. I said, I don't care. If it's a quarter, I don't care. That's, I just, and I didn't understand that. And so, but that's what I felt like I was supposed to do. So, anyways, so I did that, went around the neighborhood, people were like, okay.
And you're how old right now at this age?
I was 14.
14 years old.
Right. And so I went to people's houses, and I had a bucket for washing cars, with my soap, and, now, don't ask me what kind of soap it was, because I have no clue what that was, but, anyways, I went out and I did all that. I had towels, and what was really funny was I had like a whole wagon set up, it was like I had the lawnmower that was dragging around with me, and a wagon that had all the stuff, the towels and the soap and the buckets, all of that. So, and so when people paid me, I took the money, didn't look how much they paid me, but I put it in the box. Well, it came time to, when the youth pastor said, hey, okay, so whoever's going, the money is due today. And I'm like, or he told me when it was due. So before he went to church, I actually opened up the box and I dumped it out. And I believe it was $270 that I needed. So I opened the box, and this was within 2 weeks. And I'm counting everything, and I had $380 in that box.
Wow.
And I took it to the youth pastor, and he stopped me, and he pulled me aside, and he goes, God's going to do something absolutely amazing in your life, and I need you to know that now. Because not only did he provide for you, and I'm thinking, provide, I did all the work, and so, but, and I'm thinking that in my head, I didn't say that out loud. He goes, not only did he provide for that, but he gave you in abundance. And, so that's more than what you actually need in order to go to camp. So, so now he goes, now you have extra to be able to pay for things, or, get other, things that are going on in camp. I'm like, okay. So I went to camp, and from this point, I can't even explain it, to the point where I was sitting there was this outdoor auditorium, and the pastor or the speaker at the time started, talking about, having this relationship with God, and having this, just accepting Jesus into your heart. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, I'm like thinking, this is weird. But the next thing I know is that I'm standing up. And I'm like, why am I standing up? And it's like I almost felt like I was being pushed forward to the front stage and just letting that. But then I just felt like this whole like the I got hot. I mean, I was sweating. I was like nervous, or I felt like I was nervous. It was just this experience that I've never experienced before. And so they told me what that was at the camp, where, this was real, and I said, what's real? And they said, this is Jesus pouring into you and what you're doing now. And here it says in the Word that, when Jesus left, he said, greater are the things that are going to happen when I die, because the Holy Spirit is now going to come and fill you. And I'm like, what? I'm like really crazy now. I'm not feeling all of this happening. I'm like really scared. But I just felt this whole life change thing. Well, the youth pastor ended up leaving the church when we got back to the church, and they recommended us, actually the church kind of folded because it was really small, and they recommended us to go to another church that was just down the street. So I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I found out the youth pastor went from there to this other church, and I'm like, okay, this is, and they were, what they called it is a mission. They were hugely mission-minded.
Mm-hmm.
And so they did a lot of missions to within the states.
Wow.
So we would go, the most of my missions, so I started going on every missions trip I possibly could go on.
Wow.
And what that meant for me was that, we would pay for these trips and I would go, but my excuse wasn't, it was more of a benefit for me to get away from my parents. Because it was so bad. I ended up, after I came home, and I guess I'll go back to this now, after I came home, my dad got really upset with me for doing this and having this experience and telling me that I was a Christian. So it was basically, he like ostracized me, I guess from, because of the fact that I took that route, and just of the Christian route instead of the Jewish faith in his opinion.
Oh.
So I was kicked out of my house.
Oh.
And I had nowhere to go, so I ended up on the street for a couple of months, and then I went to the church that I was going to, and I told them what was going on. They go like, yeah, we have all of this, we have all of these little spaces in the church that are for missionaries, and I'm like, okay. So in trade, I mowed this huge lawn that they had, and I mean, it was like 3 acres that they had, and I would mow the lawn, I would open up the church, set the temperature for heat or cooling for air conditioning, and so I'd make sure that everything was set correctly. And that was the trade for me staying there. And then when I was 16, I got a car, and I was able to, start going to school. And then my parents moved to another area, and my mom asked if I would be willing to rent a room there to help them with the mortgage. And so I did, and that was another big mistake for going back. And it was just one thing after the other. My dad again telling me how stupid I was, and for believing in this Jesus, and it was just amazing. So my journey from there has been going on these missions trips to Arizona and New Mexico on the Navajo and the Cherokee reservations.
Wow.
And this probably is for another time to talk, but it was more along the lines what happened on these missions trips, where we were supposed to go build, like build a church or build homes or
Uh-huh.
things like that. And what ended up happening was, for me, um, on almost every trip, I would go with the knowledge, knowing that I was going to go build. And next thing I know is these chiefs were noticing that all these kids were flocking towards me.
Oh no.
They would hang around me. It was really funny because the Navajo, like the Navajo reservation, they have no hair on their arms or their legs.
Wow.
And which was so funny, to me, but they would come up to me and they would rub my legs. And I would freak out, I'm like, what the heck, And so the chief and also the gentleman that was in charge of our trip, he kept going, no, you need to do what God's calling you to do. And I'm like, I was told that I was going to build, and he's like, nope. You were called to be the foundation for these kids. And I'm like,
wow.
Okay, so, here it is, they speak Navajo. So they did speak Navajo and English, but I ended up doing a quick shift of a vacation Bible school.
Wow.
And I can't tell you, it was like, and they would call me like the Pied Piper for kids.
This whole time you think that you're going there to construction, to work with your hands.
Exactly.
And really your purpose was to be some kind of structural support for the children that were there.
It was crazy. I mean, I can't tell you how crazy it was, because it made me like almost embarrassed, because here it is, the rest of the team that was there were getting upset with me because I wasn't helping them, and I was getting to do all this other stuff with my kids, and I'm playing and stuff.
I can see that.
But it was one of those miraculous things, watching these kids just turn their lives to Christ, and I don't understand this. I mean, it was something that was not what I truly understood, or wanted to believe, because of the things, because I went through school, and, to be really honest and upfront, I was a D average student. And just before graduation, there was this one my government teacher, he was failing me. And this was right at the graduation, so he said if I didn't do this one assignment, that I wasn't going to graduate. I mean, I literally had cap and gown.
Wow.
And I'm finishing this project like an hour before graduation, and I turn it into him, and he's like, okay, I'll accept this. And he ends up giving me a D in the class. And so I graduated, but as a D average student, every time someone, any of my classes would say, okay, we're going to take a test now, I would go into failure mode. So I didn't understand, like with all these mission trips, that I was not doing what we went out there to do. So in my mind, I was a failure for not doing what we went out there to do. But God had something different in mind. But I didn't understand that. I still didn't understand that having, it was so religion in my head. I didn't understand what I have now as a relationship. And that's, again, that's so different than just saying, okay, well, I'm a Christian. No, well, it's this, a Christian is, if you break it up, it's a Christ, and N, or IAN, is like small, so it's like a representation. I'm a representation of Christ, and so my everyday walk has to be that, and that's what people are seeing. But again, I never saw that. It was such a battle for me to, as I'm seeing all of these kids turning their lives to Christ, and all of these adults turning their lives to Christ and crying, and I'm not understanding this. I'm not understanding and comprehending what I am actually doing. So I get to the point where I'm just, I gave up dating. I gave up all of that because, again, I never told you. My dad told me that, again, that I would never be married and I would never have kids. And so I didn't search for a wife. And my that same youth pastor, he actually told me, and I'll never forget, I give all, honor to him. His name is Mike Rice. As far as I know now, he lives in Washington, the state of Washington, on the West Coast. But he told me, he says, I want you to do me a favor. And he goes, I've never seen faith like yours. And again, okay. He goes, I want you to write a letter to God. And in this letter, I want you to explain everything in detail, because God already knows the desires of your heart. But I want you to know what you want in a wife, and what you're looking for, and what, and just let go. Don't be worried about, because God has somebody set before you. He goes, I can see it. I can see that you're going to be married and you're going to have kids. So I'm like, okay, whatever, dude. I'm thinking in my head, he's nuts. But, okay, well, I did the whole knee thing, so writing a letter. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do to the letter? And he goes, that's up to you. You can either mail it or burn it. And so just so, this is something that is, you're not going to be mailing a letter to Jesus. He's not going to get your letter. I'll tell you that, right? And so, but I want you to physically know that you're giving away, giving it up to him and trusting him to provide you with a wife. And the very interesting thing that happened with that is that in that letter, the last things I wrote is, one of the things that I wanted, because I've seen my mom sew, every so often she would sew something, and that's something that just right, I was like, wow, that's so cool that a machine makes her clothes. I was just like, whatever. And I put in there, I would love for somebody that knows how to sew. But the last thing that I put in the letter, and I'll never forget this, is I said, because you know who the one is for me, I want you to have her come searching for me instead of me going to search for her. And in the meantime, through all of this, was tons of church activities. I was involved with a church choir, a group where we would go into prisons. I mean, there's so much that I'm trying to tell you in the short amount of time, but we would go into youth prisons and prison camps and present this production of music and drama to bring these and just let these people know that they're not alone. They don't. This is not, jail does not define you, and so I went through all of this learning over the years. And so the funny thing was, again, going back to the letter, it was 6 years later, after I wrote this letter, that Bev, my wife, literally came searching for me. And she was making phone calls. She met me at her church that we went to go do our musical at, randomly. And so she told her best friend at the time, and she was also dating someone. So again, odd situation, but she told her best friend that whoever gets this guy is going to be the luckiest person in the world. That's what she told her girlfriend. And and her girlfriend is like, you need to know that you're dating someone. And she goes, I know, but whoever gets this guy it's going to be the luckiest person in the world. So I'm like, okay, cool. I heard, she told me that later after we got married, of course. But she ended up, no, I won't go into this because there's so much that I would love to tell you.
Well, I really like this letter thing. So Mike Rice, right,
Yes, sir.
tells you to get on your knees at 14. Was that about right?
Right.
And to talk to God like you talk to a person.
Right.
How old were you when he had you when he asked you to write that letter?
I was 15.
15 years
it was
old.
The next year.
So at 15 years old, his minister at church has you write down the desires of your heart because God knows all things. However, he wanted you to see the desires of your heart on paper with your natural eye.
Yeah. I mean,
wow.
Just everything. It was, and I'll tell you, because of that failure mode from my dad, just understanding that, the things that he told me, it affected me, and today I realize it infected me. So everything through life, trying to get a job or trying to get, because in my head I was going to fail. So with this letter, I never dated, so I never went to prom. I never went to, anything, any dances or anything. And the funny thing is, and I just, heard from my, she's my second cousin. Her name is Mona. She also lives in California. But I asked her, just so we can go and have fun. It was they have grad night at Disneyland at the time, and this was in California. So I said, you know what? Do you want to go with me and just have fun with me? And so we did. So it was one of the coolest nights I've ever had and experienced.
Wow.
Full well knowing that I wasn't dating her or anything, but it was that I was able for the first time just have fun with someone. And she still has pictures, and she sent me a picture, and it was a grad night at Disney, and of her and I taking a picture together, and it was hilarious. But I never dated after that letter. I never, like I said, never went to prom, never went, it was, because I really, honestly, not only did I give that to God, but it was something that I was so afraid of and had that knowledge that I was never going to be married because of what my dad told me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like, well, since I'm not going to get married, I might as well go on all these missions trips. I'll go ahead and write this letter, whatever, and
burn it or put it in the mail.
I ended up.
That sounds like bogus stuff.
Burning it. I went into our backyard, and because that's when my my mom asked if I would move back in with them.
Yeah.
They had this whole fire pit, and I ended up burning it in the backyard.
Okay.
At the fire pit.
How long did you burn it after you wrote it?
It was right away.
Right away.
That was right. I mean, after
how long did it take you to write it?
It took me, I think it was that night.
Yeah.
That I literally went home, and it was almost like 2 pages.
Oh wow! 2 pages of desires of a wife.
Yes, everything
wow.
in there, and it was just funny because I full well knowing in my head that I wasn't gonna get married, and through all of that that torture or whatever you want to call it, I put down all these desires that I wanted in a wife, and I said I wanted somebody who knew how to sew, and somebody that of course I had that beauty in mind, and because he told me to be honest, so I was honest. Just everything about her, and again, the last thing I put in the letter was I want to go. I want her to come searching for me, instead of me going to search for her. And again, going back to that, she ended up literally finding out where I was because she saw me at this one place. She ended up going on a mission trip to Argentina for 2 years.
Wow.
And so she was writing me letters this whole time because she had broken up with this guy. But something I didn't mention was the first time that I saw her, it was like, I mean, I was 16 or 17 when that happened, and it was like love at first sight. I mean, I was like, whoa, that's so weird. But and I didn't understand that. But then she grabbed this guy's hand because she was dating somebody, and I hated her for it. You know, it was something in me that just was so upset with her. But it was really funny because she ended up coming to the church that we were at just to, she would say, hey, I'm looking for some other girls that, you know, to hang out with. But all this whole time she was like wanting to talk to me, wanting to let me know how she didn't end up with this guy. And, you know, she was writing me letters from Argentina of letting me know how much she loved me and everything, or you know, I want to let you know what's happening. I never read one letter. Not one letter did I. Every time I would see the letter come in, rip, you know, I would rip it up and I would never read it because in my heart I was so angry with her because she grabbed this other guy's hand. But that, again, that was because of my emotions that were going on in my head. So, again, what later on when she came searching for me, it was like I hid in our backyard because I was so scared. But it was like my mom loved her, my youngest sister adored her. I mean, they were like, you know, talking to each other all the time. So.
And now you're maybe around 18?
No, this was actually 20, I think I was 21.
Wow.
Yeah, so it ended up to be like 4 years after I wrote the letter.
Wow.
And we ended up getting married 2 years, 18 months, and 18 days
Wow.
later after we were dating. But when she came looking for me, I had just come back from a missions trip, and I was like, for some reason, I had these butterflies in my stomach, and I was like, what the heck is going on? So I ended up, once I found out she was coming to the house, I hid in our backyard. And I'm watching my sister trying to find me throughout the house.
Wow.
And I'm watching all this. I come to the back door, and she opens it, like quickly opens up our screen door, and she hugged me, and I hugged her back. And you know how they describe, you know, relate with fireworks and, you know, things like, you know.
Oh, yeah.
That was one of those moments. I could not explain it any more than I knew at that very moment that she was the one that I was going to marry.
And then now you're around 22.
Yeah, this was when we got, I was 23 when we got married.
Okay.
And so it was like, again, it was 2 years, 8 months, 18 days, you know, and ever since then, I mean, we got married and
almost 10 years from when you wrote the letter.
Yeah.
Almost 10 years.
Yeah. So it was again, one of those things with that was I just let it go because of the fact that I knew from what my dad told me that I was never going to get married.
Because little boys believe what their fathers tell them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, especially, you know, because, you know, coming home when I was a little kid, do you have kids?
Not yet.
Okay, so the understanding of knowing when as a dad, one of the things that I've always seen, you see it on TV, you see it everywhere, where a dad walks in and the child comes running, Dad!
Yes.
Well, we would do that. I had, again, two younger sisters, but me and my first younger sister, which she's 14 months um, uh, less than me, we would come up running to my dad, getting so excited that we would get home, and it was like he would look around quickly to find that there was a piece of lint on the floor or there's something, and instead of hugging us, every single time he would go, how many effing times did you walk over that? And we're like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, and so it immediately went into that mode of, you know, that having a dad it was not a great thing growing up with. And so, once I had Bev in my life, the one thing that I always desired was, for some reason, I've always wanted 8 kids, and so she's like, okay, I come from a huge family, and so our Christmases were like 100 people would show up, and Thanksgiving, same thing, and but for her side of the family, she has 3 older sisters. She was the oops of the family, because the youngest sister was 12 years old when she was born. So Bev kind of grew up by herself. She was the only child. She has stories of her own, but it's just so amazing how God knew that she was the one for me and waited that 12 years for me, and for me that, just looking at that, of just knowing that God cared for me that much, that he waited for her mom and dad they were in their she was in her mom was in her 40s when they had Bev, and of course at that time it was just, you don't have babies after, well, same thing today. It's really, to have babies after 40 is just really hard, for any woman. And but to watch that and to see that God cared enough, and she's been on every adventure. And again, like I mentioned before, I have 4 kids who were with us through every adventure, and that's what we told them every time we. My first great job I got laid off from, and
What type of job was that?
I was working for Countrywide Home Loans, and that was in Simi Valley, California, and they were huge at the time. And I was one of the managers there, worked there, I think it was 9 years. After 3 years, I got promoted to a manager. I had 15 people underneath me, and we were the top team every month for 2 years straight.
Wow.
And we had 10 teams on the floor, and so it was kind of neat. And I would tell them, I never looked at my team as like I was over them. I was with them. So I was constantly making sure if there was somebody that was not making as much, I would sit down with them to make sure that they were, excelling. So everybody on the team was excelling, and so it was really great because it was such a huge team camaraderie there. And so when the company went bankrupt, we didn't know it. The managers actually called us in, and he comes in, or the CEO, excuse me, he came in, and He had tears in his eyes, and he's apologizing to us. Sorry, please let your employees know that we're sorry that we are closing in 3 months. So give them a heads up so they can start looking for work. Well, it ended up to where that was on a Tuesday, and that Friday there was actually chains on all of the doors. And so we waited there. There was all the employees standing outside going, what's going on? We're standing there waiting. And so a couple of the chains got taken off the doors. We went inside, and the CEO of the company he came in, and he's crying, and he said, "I'm so sorry. We're gonna have to close down," and he literally got arrested in front of us. And
wow.
We're like, this is crazy. But what ended up happening through that is, because they had access, because of direct deposit at that time, they had access to all of our accounts.
Wow.
And with the 401k, with all of that stuff, and all of that somehow was able to be retracted out of our accounts. And so our 401ks were gone, our savings were gone. They literally had access, and it was a big news thing. It was and so I ended up, it was like just over $80,000.
Wow.
And so, but at that time we had, so we ended up losing one of our cars. We didn't know what we were going to do. Rent in California is absolutely ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
But living in Florida is starting to get at the same thing. It's doing the exact same thing, and for no reason. But we're talking, we were paying $2,600 a month in rent for a house, because we had foster kids at the time, and also a couple of our own kids. So technically, I've had 8 kids, because we had 4 foster kids for 2 years. We thought we were going to adopt them, and they ended up going home with their mom. So again, there's so many stories that I could tell you, at a different time. I know that I've been babbling so much on this, but to really get to the reason why I really wanted to do this was because there's one thing that happened to me, and I hope people really have been listening to this whole thing so far. But there was one thing that happened to me that really changed the course for me. I was 19 years old, didn't know Bev yet, and again, going on all these mission trips, all these different things are happening, didn't understand what it was. I still had that religion mindset.
And what does that mean? Can you? Yeah.
So having the religion mindset of just knowing that you're going somewhere, and that religion is saying that, I hear that a lot on TV, where someone says, well, I'm a Christian, or I'm a Catholic, or I'm a Muslim, but they don't really know why they're a Muslim, or why they're Christian, or why they're Catholic, or but it's just mostly by association. And so it was like, okay, well, I'm a Christian, and all I have to do is say 10 Hail Marys, and or as a Catholic or a Christian going, well, it's okay for me to mess up, because all I have to do is say, well, Jesus took my sins away, and I all I have to do is ask forgiveness, and it's done and over with. So that to me is having a religion, just kind of saying that you're part and associated with something. But having a relationship, that's everything that changed for me.
Relationship with who, Tony?
With Jesus.
Who is this Jesus?
Kind of makes me emotional talking about this, because I realized that Jesus was sacrificed his life, sacrificed everything. And you think, well, that was over 2,000 years ago, that was for that people, that was for them. But I know by every experience, everything that I've gone through, and it all hasn't been good, I'll tell you that right now. I mean, so Jesus, it's so cool and so miraculous. Saying when when I get up, I do what's called devotions. Just getting in the Word and just really and studying what that means, where that's coming from, and it's just like with anything else, and just fully knowing of why I serve Jesus. Why do I make the time for that? And Jesus is when he went through this whole life, he learned everything. I mean, where people were struggling with sin, and sin is anything, from stealing a piece of candy to, to murder, it's sin is sin is sin, and so understanding that when Jesus actually died on that cross, when he actually, and it wasn't just with the full knowledge of knowing that I was all part of that knowledge beforehand. And the neat thing that I know today is, especially with reading the Word and just really getting into it, is just the understanding that when Jesus said that trust me, you don't want me here. You don't want me here because you're going to be able to do greater works. Because the third piece of this whole puzzle, the Holy Spirit, is going to come down and fill you when you and so that's what changed me. That's what changed my life. That's what gave me like this holy smokes, just
To know that Jesus can be with you here in this life.
Everywhere, but again, even though I knew that Jesus was there, it still didn't make things easier. Going through life things, going through depression, going through anxiety, going through the failure moments inside me where, you feel like you can't get a job or, but...
So Tony, if having a relationship with Jesus during these hard times didn't make anything easier, why did you choose to have a relationship with this Jesus?
It was that first moment when I got on my knees at the edge of my bed, that when I woke up with the knowledge of knowing what I was supposed to do, and when I showed up at that youth pastor to let him know that I had $380, and he said, I have never seen faith like yours. From that moment, throughout all the depression, throughout all the hardships that my family has gone through, and to the listening audience, they don't know what my house looks like. They don't know what that I'm actually in a condo, that's not mine. We're renting it, so it's not like where most people that you talk to or hear about, they have oh, look what Jesus did for me. I have this 6,000 square foot home. I have 8 cars, and all of this, and even though I'll tell you right now, that's there's people that are supposed to be that way as well, but God didn't call us that direction, and which I've come to the knowledge of knowing that that's okay. There is so much fullness in knowing that when I get to see a life changed, and I've been in youth ministry since I was 19, and touching the lives of kids and seeing their lives turn around when I see these kids with hoodies over their face and you know and calling me a hypocrite and calling I said okay, well, let's you know let's see, let's I want to get to know you, and they didn't understand why I wanted to get to know them. Some of them got to the point that I was a pervert. I mean, just because they were so freaked out.
Children, yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm like, I'm not asking you to, I want to meet you somewhere. I want to, if I'm going to pick you up, we're not going to stay in my car. We're going to go, have some iced tea or some, whatever.
Right.
And we would sit at a table, and I'll never forget the lives that I've seen that, like I said, were their faces were covered by a hoodie or whatever, and their lives filled with drugs, and to see who they are today, and and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I've been through. Everything that I've gone through is the benefit for somebody else. To know that no matter what hardship you're going through, no matter what happens in your life, when you choose to let go of the hardship and lay it at the throne room, you're literally just praying and saying, God, I don't know if you're real or not, but I need to give this to you because I can't handle it. I can't do this. So what am I supposed to do? And he'll rock your world. He will absolutely rock your world. And I love the fact that is, one of the favorite things I've seen is, in the Bible where it talks about having faith like a mustard seed. I was like, okay, but then somebody showed me what a mustard seed actually looked like. And
is there anything you can describe it to? How small it is?
Oh
is there
my
anything
gosh,
you can think
it's
of?
like a pencil lead. It's like, the tip of the pencil, or, I mean, it is so tiny. But it was just that act of that tiny moment in my life where, again, just getting on my knees and saying, God, if you're real, I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know
That's
what
right.
I'm doing.
That's right.
No matter how you feel.
Yeah.
But that, again, is what faith is. It's like you get up every morning and you go sit down on a chair. You're having faith that chair is not going to fall.
That's right. You're hoping for something that you cannot see yet. You have not sit down, but you're sitting down.
Exactly.
You're taking the action.
With
not knowing
yes.
that chair might break, right?
Exactly.
But for some reason, in other actions in our life, we have to make sure that the chair is going to hold us before we even sit down.
But if you don't make the effort to sit down in the chair,
he'll never have a chance to hold you.
You'll never know what faith is.
That's
You'll
awesome.
never know what, it's like, I don't know if you've ever seen somebody, do that faith fall, where they, they fall backwards and hope that somebody will be back there.
That's right.
And of course you see all of the ones that they tell you to fall and they end up going the opposite direction, or, all the flubs, and they end up falling down flat on the floor. But that was one thing that during that experience of knowing who God is, knowing where the existence of a non-failure, and that I can rely on through thick and thin. And like I said, I have so many things that I want to talk about, so many things that that I have been shown, through all of these processes, I can't tell you the deepest, darkest depression that I was in when I was 19 years old, And if you have time, I'll be glad to tell you this story.
You know
If you
what,
wanna do it
Tony?
a different
I think we should dive right into it, man. Let's hear about this depression at
Awesome.
19 years old.
Okay.
Because I think that there's probably many folks that are listening to this podcast right now that are dealing with some type of depression, some type of mental um, exhaustion. So let's walk us into this and take us through and show us what it looked like, and how you dealt with that, and how your relationship with Jesus helped you also.
Well, if you can mentally, for the listening audience, do me a favor and just, sit down, put your seatbelt on, because this was one of those moments in my life that changed the course of everything for me. And I was 19 years old. And again, before I met Bev or knew, but I was going on all of these mission trips, but it was that religion that was holding me back. So but I really was so angry with God, because all I heard every time something good would happen was, that's not for you, you're a failure. It was always in my mind a fail moment. So I decided that my life wasn't worth it. All of this garbage that was happening with me, with all the failures, with all, hearing my dad over and over and just yelling at me, and, just hearing that, it was hard. I was alone, and, I'm trying to help other people, like through all these mission trips, they say, oh, you're so fun, you're so,
Right.
But I was there for them, but I didn't have anybody for me. I didn't have, so I ended up, because I was really close to the beach, and I knew some spots at the beach that were extremely quiet. There was nobody there, and I took a knife with me, and I was ready to end my life.
Oh my gosh.
And
at 19 years old?
Yeah. And I just said, I was bawling. And I said, you know what, God, I can't stand this. I cannot stand this. And the way my life is going, the way things are happening in my life, and, I don't feel like I'm worth anything. So you need to tell me if you're real or not. And with knife in hand, ready to slit my wrists, ready to do something drastic to get rid of my life. And at that very moment, as I'm bawling, I hear all I hear is, look at your hands. And so I put up my hands, and I'm hearing this, but not understanding. And I'm hearing, look at your hands. And I look at my hands, and I'm like, okay, what now? And I hear, as clear as I'm talking to you right now, I hear, turn your hands over. And I turn my hands over, and it says, look at your hands. And I'm like, okay. And I said, and I hear, again, audible as I'm talking to you, I hear, look at the tips of your fingers. And I'm like, okay. And I'm still not understanding who I'm talking to or what's, and all I hear is, there is not one person in this world, in the entire universe, that has the same fingerprints as you do. Because you were finally knit together in your mother's womb. And honestly, I cannot tell you, it was just as clear as I'm talking to you, saying this to me. And I didn't even see that verse in the Bible. I've never read that verse before in the Bible about the whole knitting together in your mother's womb. And then the next thing I hear, it was not to be your mom, and it was not to be your dad. It was to be for me. I was like, what? You know, so I'm literally at that moment. I'm like, I take that knife and I threw it into the ocean. I threw it as far as I could because, I didn't want it in my hands anymore. I
Wow.
was freaking out because I heard this. And ever since that moment, ever since that moment that I heard that, that's what I get to tell other people. I get to tell other people that your fingerprints matter. You know, I know, I love going into like random places. I'll see a guy stocking the shelves, and I'll stand there and I say thank you for doing that. They're like, okay, and I said, do you realize that what you're doing right now, your fingerprints are on everything that you touch. And when that item is taken, they're taking it because of the faith that you had to do your job, to put it on the shelf, that they can get it back. They can take it off the shelf and they're going to purchase it. I said, that's what it is, because your fingerprints are over everything. That you do, that when you're eating, when you're, if you're in construction, everything that you touch, the wood, the hammer, the nails, that's all a testimony of who you are, and who you've created to be. So that's what happened when I was 19. And at that same moment, or maybe it was afterwards, I can't, to be really honest with you, that's a long time ago, but I got this full vision of this, of what I was supposed to build. And it was a vision. First and foremost, there was thousands of youth that were in a building. And all I kept seeing was that I was talking to them and tears streaming down their face. But it was not only just to say, like what they call like a mountain experience, like you go out into the wilderness and, but it was one of those things that I saw in my head that it was a place where people can come, get rehabilitated, housing, getting their lives back together again, letting them know that, that's one thing I see about the prisons and the things like that. There's no rehabilitation. They put them in jail and lock them in this cell, and there's no rehabilitation. There's nothing that's happening to change them. So most people that come out of prison come out the exact same and worse, because now they don't know how to live their lives. And that's where I felt I was. I felt like I was in a mental prison, and I couldn't get out of it. I could not get out of it. And so ever since that moment, I've been able to tell other people that, you can put all of your family's fingerprints on a piece of paper. You would not know whose fingerprint that is. You don't know, because none of them match. Not one. And the fun part for me is to tell you those, because my wife is a seamstress, it made more sense for me to know, when you see it in the Bible where it talks about, you were finally knit together in your mother's womb. Those lines, those differences in your finger are those stitch marks, that knitting that gets put together. And again, when you see a police officer, when you first get, if you're arrested or something happens, first thing that they do is they take your fingerprints.
Yeah.
They take your fingerprints because that's going to associate, and in the system, they know who you are. So I don't want, anybody that I talk to, is it brings me such like joy to let them know that they're worth something.
Mm-hmm.
That every part of them, they are worth all of it. And
That they were made for the God of the earth to enjoy.
exactly. But and we don't get to do that because we're told that there's a structure. Like, okay, well, you have to go to school.
It's kind of like
go to
you're
college.
born and then they qualify you to live in the society, and they could disqualify you, something like that.
Right, where they make the value on, where you come from or what you do. And that's one thing that,
Yeah, right. Putting
man.
measuring your value when there's nothing to measure.
No, no, and see, but even talking with people now, they don't know the color of my skin. They don't know my background. They don't know, nobody knows that. And what saddens me the most is that everyone puts themselves in a category.
Yep.
And again, if you bleed, if somebody bleeds, we're all bleed the same. It's like there's no such thing in the kingdom of God of black, white, Hispanic, Chinese or Japanese or Asian. There's no, you wouldn't know whose fingerprints they were, but each person was made with great value. And when you see and you go to these places where lower income, like I came from lower income, I was, because I was on the streets, I was I had to try to figure out who I was. And when I have a wife who is just like, okay, we're good with what we have, I'm like feeling bad that I'm not providing, and she goes, no, you're doing exactly what you need to be doing. I'm like, what? And she goes, monetary, things that you purchase can only last for so long. But the things that you pour into somebody's heart, pour into somebody's life to let them know their value, and that's priceless. That is absolutely priceless, to let somebody know that they're worth something.
So, putting your hands and working with people compared to working with materials is probably more of an eternity work, right?
Absolutely. And a lot of times they don't even know it. They don't even know that I'm talking, just showing their value of just knowing that they've been stitched together. And then once I let them know, I said, hey, not only that, because people don't realize that all of us, we're told we have different fingerprints because of the fact that that's what they do in at police stations. They, or or anything that you try to do that's like government, or they always take your fingerprints, because that's going to associate who you are, and what's funny, those fingerprints never say, okay, well, he's going to be a millionaire, he's going to be, on the streets, he's going to be, nothing there. But until that moment that you realize how valuable that you are, how important you are, is you can't put a price tag on that.
That's so powerful, Tony.
You cannot put a price tag on letting somebody know their value.
So, a man that was abused mentally when you were a child by your father, where are you at today at 50 years old? How do you feel about yourself and your value?
I love the fact that even through all the trials, the stuff that we've gone through as a family, because as I mentioned to you before the broadcast, it was, I've been married going on 27 years this year, and I have 4 kids, and the neatest thing is to see their relationship with each other. They want to hug us. They want to be with us. They want to have family dinners, and it's those things that I never had growing up. And but the best thing is hearing that from other people, like, um, your kids are amazing. What, how did that happen, And, with today and everything that's happening where the government has taken over to tell families, you're not allowed to spank your kids, you're not, or if you do, then you have to, here's my card, you need to call me right away, and we'll put your parents in prison for, disciplining you, and that's where our society has gone, where there's no discipline. They call it free speech, or they call, with the shooting somebody, or,
Well, I
it's
mean, just from learning a little bit about you, Tony, it sounds like you have four very respectful children that are turning into adults. Did you discipline your children?
absolutely. We were, one of the things that, not only was it I call it the evil eye, like, opening your eyes wider and, staring down your kid, but there was moments in their life where I spanked them, and let them know, and then, but after that, I would tell them, this is why you got spanked. This is why this happened. This is why the discipline happened. So again, I never had that. Growing up, my mom was like, she would chase me around the house with the belt, and wherever the belt landed, that's where, whether it was across my face, my back, my butt, my legs,
Yeah.
so it was, looking back, um, it was like a game, but an evil game, I guess you can say, But yes, I disciplined my kids. We disciplined our kids, and we were always on the same page.
And when you say that, like, how did you discipline your kids?
Most of the discipline came with communication, and just like, look, this is not right. This is not what you're supposed to be doing.
Transparency.
Yeah, I mean, everything was right up front.
Did you hide anything from your children?
No, everything. That was the key of everything. My kids know. Sometimes I think they know too much about us, and but it's like one thing, like, they know everything about us. They know, when I'm upset, and they know that, okay, well, Dad needs a little bit of space, and let it go. I mean, okay, we'll talk to him later. But it's like the stories from the kids, and what's hilarious to me is watching them clean the house together, like clean the kitchen. You'll hear singing, you'll hear laughing, and it takes them like an hour and a half, 2 hours just to clean the kitchen. And I'm like, what the heck? What are you doing? And the whole time they're laughing with each other. They're communicating they're having fun. And I'm like, Bev and I look at each other, and we just start like, oh my gosh, this is real. This is so neat.
Tony, it sounds too good to be true. I think it must have something to do with that relationship that you have with this person named Jesus.
That's what the coolest thing is for me, is that I'll never back down from the fact that I see Jesus in my wife. I see Jesus in each one of my kids, and the greatest thing is that I get to have this relationship. I don't have to have this relationship. I get to, nothing was forced on me. I was never coerced, in saying that, well, you have to do this, and, you have to bow down through, I mean, whatever it might be, I get to go to church. I get to tithe. I get to minister to somebody. I get to hug somebody, and it's not that I have to do it. I get to do it, and I get to go to work. I get, whatever it might be. They're words that instead of I have to, even if I don't like it, I always use the term of I get to do this,
Tony, if you had a final message to the audience, because we're going to have to starting to close this up, and you guys are going to have to get more of Tony on part 2. I'm sure he's going to have some more exciting stories from you guys, but we're just going to leave this with Tony's last message just for you folks.
If I can just leave one thing is, don't lose your hope. You know, we look at today's vision of what faith is or what hope is, and you know, you cannot devalue yourself or value yourself based on what you have. You know, I mean, if you were to die today, none of that stuff goes with you. Nothing goes with you. Nothing is, you know, so having things, having stuff, like you could see my house. I don't have a lot of things. Everything that we have is either from a, you know, we got for really inexpensive, or the, you know, like a Salvation Army, or, you know, something, you know, but it's, we don't need things. If somebody came in and my whole family was taken away, I would know that they got it a purpose for that. You know, of course, I would be angry and sad, but at the same time, is like there's such great purpose of knowing who you are as a person, and that the more you fight that, the more I don't know if the word evil, you know, you become, but you just start, you can't see people for who they are. You know, you know, all you see is colors. You know, you start seeing, well, he's a black person, he's a white person, he's a Mexican, he's an Asian, you know, and start getting to those mindsets. So me closing it out today, honestly, there's so much I want to say, there's so much I want to you know, tell, but I can't wait to see and hear somebody's life is changed through this, to experience that no matter what you're going through, you're not alone. No matter what you're going through, you're not alone. And whether it's good or bad, or, you know, and you can't look at your life as, well, this is it for me. You know, I'm here to get my 401k, and, you know, and I retire at 65. I mean, most people now that they're 65, they're at Walmart because they can't afford to be, you know. So nowhere in the Bible does it say about retirement. So I'm 50 years young. I don't see myself retiring at 65, you know, financially. I don't see that happening, but even if it did, you know, retirement is not in my vocabulary. You know, every breath that I have, I want to make sure that if anyone ever comes up to me, or I come across somebody that I'm led to, I don't want them to ever know that I'm greater than they are. You know, and that's what excites me, is that there's so many people that think that, well, I have to be, to get to this point in order for me to be valued, or, you know, whatever it might be. But that's what I have today. You know, I just have this, you know, just knowing that no matter where you're at, no matter what you're going through, that I care about you. You know, I care about what you're going through. I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear, you know, what, you know, how I can be with you, and just let you know that you're going to be okay, you know, and your life is worth it.
Wow, what a powerful message today, Tony. Really appreciate you letting the Plugs team into your home today to collect this magical story from you. Just extremely thankful, and cannot wait to have you back on the Plugs, hopefully within the next 14 days or so.
That sounds great, and I can't thank you enough for what you're doing, and what's going to happen. And I just pray that God will just completely rock your world and just open up doors that you never thought can be open, you know, and that there will be people that hear this and see this and want to know more, you know, and know that they're valuable. So I appreciate you doing this. You know, my bad side of me is I love to talk. And so, as you can see from this.
Well, the plugs love people like you, Tony.
So, I guess it's either a downfall or it's a, but I also love to listen. So, if there is somebody out there that needs somebody, know that I would be happy and grateful that you took the time, and I'll be glad to be there. So thanks again.
It's magical. And let me tell you guys, we're not just messing around with you. If you're out there right now and you're losing hope and you really need someone to talk to, we need you guys to just go ahead and pull out your phone. Well, you might already have it open. And email theplugspodcast@gmail.com. Or if you're on Facebook, click the message. If you're on YouTube, send us a message. If you want to go by our website, theplugspodcast.com, please go by the website and send us a message. Let us know how you're doing. Maybe you need a prayer request. And since we're talking about that now, you've heard us talk about a man named Jesus. That is the Son of God. He was sent to this earth to die for our sins. And if you're curious about him and you want to know more about him, it's as simple as what Tony was talking about. Go and find the floor. Put your knees on the floor right now, and you just simply talk to God like you're talking to me or anyone else. And you ask him to send his Son into your heart. You say, Jesus, will you please come into my heart today and clean me from the inside out? Wash my sins. I believe that you died on the cross for my life, for that I can live life and have a much fuller life in you. And Jesus will blow your mind. He will liven your life up. You will never be the same from that moment on. And please send us a message at theplugspodcast.com, at theplugspodcast Gmail. Every Sunday at 6 p.m. we will be posting a brand new message.